see at businesses. And along with that, we're going to also describe our vision and what we bring to our customers. So most companies have built applications and invested over the last 25 years in also buying applications as well. Common applications that they have bought would be ERPs, big mammoth like SAP, often made up of a number of modules, CRMs. And these are applications that bring good to us, but when they started, they were all silos of automation. There were islands of automations not connected. The picture gets a little more interesting because most of these customers over time, to enhance their analytics, bigger customers, they built data warehouses. Some of them even grew them to enterprise class data marts, or rather data marts, and the enterprise is data warehouses. And these are nothing more than apps that start by replicating data so that you could point to analytics and not disrupt them. Furthermore, as time rolled, larger businesses had to interact with partners in an automated way, what's often referred to as B2B. So to achieve partner integration, example of that, this is the one classic flavor, is doing EDI, but also interact with partners using other standards like XML. They had to set up gateways. To interact with customers, like consumers to business, they set up portals. And the problem they started facing years ago is, as their landscape started growing, they had to connect these. And a large majority of businesses there to connect these applications, they basically built what we call point-to-point integrations. These are one-offs done by different groups, different technologies often. And basically they welded pipes between these apps. And the problem with these integrations, they're brittle. They create a strong dependency amongst all these applications, meaning and the word that's used is they're tightly coupled. This is so married to everyone else. If you remove this one, you have no idea what domino effect it's going to have. So very costly to build, very costly to maintain. That was one of the issues we've seen. And just to highlight the picture a little further, application to many customers, we have customers like Coca-Cola, they have several thousands of applications in their portfolio that they have to support. And by the way, they've made them all work in a seamless way together to support their bottling operations, starting from manufacturing all the way up to distribution. We will see even all the way up to watching in retail stores, these smart Coke machines, coolers, smart coolers, where if a cooler needs maintenance, being able to sense signals and send a maintenance person to it. But so the typical landscape is messy, to many customers entirely chaotic. Many customers we deal with have acquired other customers, they've grown by M&As. These introduce new applications often that you can't abandon, not at least for potentially several years. So basically the situation of spaghetti interactions and integration can be pretty messy. In recent years, we've seen a push in the industry to go to do more analytics, some predictive. So in the area of big data, we've seen some customers start investing in alternatives to BI or alternatives to data warehouse and data marts, doing Hadoop. But likewise, the issues, nothing more than replicate, they multiply, and they add more complexity to the infrastructure within the enterprise. In fact, we just add one more before we shifted to our vision. Over the last 4 or 5 years, a number of customers started moving applications like HR, human resources, payments, even some of the finance, CRM, into the cloud. Again, these are assets and they can't, in a respectable company, live as islands separated from the world. So to connect them, the same plumbing that is point to point, that is pretty brittle, was occurring. So this is the landscape. And just one thought: we're not trying to poo-poo apps. In fact, we believe as we will see, one of the mandates CIOs are being asked is to innovate. And one of the ways to innovate is to build applications. In fact, let's just highlight it visually here. When you build an application, let's represent a custom app. There is value in building custom apps. It is the way normally businesses differentiate themselves from the competitor. If you have SAP, your competitor next door is likely to have SAP. How do you differentiate yourself? The adage of buying for parity, to just be equal with others, versus build to have an advantage, to have a competitive advantage, is still there. You innovate by creating your custom apps that uses your IP to engage with customers, and so on. So there is goodness in building custom apps, but there's mixed emotions, there's sadness to it. And that is, every time I, as the CIO or a director, says, let's build a new application, there's a number of capabilities universally you worry about. You worry about security of these apps. You worry about scalability, how performant it is. You worry about, does it support standards? We're tired of building one-offs where there's no standard. I want to be able to connect it to supporting standards, common ones we've heard, like SOAP and SOA, to let me interoperate. There are quite a number of them. So these are things you do. So what happens is, every time you build an application, number one-off, and probably the team that works with it have to build these capabilities into the application, have to do special testing, and then at the end of the day, they still have to do some one-off connections. So what you're doing is you are adding more stress to this messy, chaotic environment. And against this backdrop, if you think of the CIO, and this dude is our CIO. The CIO is under pressure. CIOs, we see them being asked to improve. Let's make sure he's not just ahead.
That's a good way to get ahead.
So CIOs are being asked to improve 3 areas in the business almost universally. And the first area, or the first KPI they're asked to improve, is cost. They're asked to reduce it. They're asked to simplify infrastructure. We've seen a number of them take different approaches and initiatives to do it. And we offer capabilities, and you will see part of our vision to even help them start with that process. Be able to sort through this mess, determine priorities. And the third is innovation. They're asked to innovate. If you don't innovate nowadays, you can't compete. Pretty much in most industries, technology drives it. So just to point out to you, a CIO wants to build more, but more, which is goodness, creates more mess. And just to give you an idea, according to a Gartner report that came out earlier this year, basically it states that the average CIO, 79% of their money is spent just keeping this, if you will, house of cards almost holding together up. So if you visualize it, in fact, put it here. 79%, and that leaves me, if I'm a CIO, wishful thinking, with 21% only room to innovate. And again, every time I may pop up another application. The way we see it, there has to be a better way than this. And just before we shift into our vision, just want to highlight, if you break down an app, the heart, the central piece where most of the investment goes into the business logic. Those of us architects here, they're familiar. Every app normally has a data aspect to it. Most apps have a user interface side to it, or what's called presentation layer. And then at the center of the app is business logic, if you will, that thinking part of the application. Business logic, you could actually, if you want to break it down, and we're highlighting this because this is an integral piece of our platform. Business logic, if you want to amplify it, typically breaks into the following, or at least a subset of the following. Integration, events and data, decisions, rules, filtering, correlating data. These are decisions, as well as tasks. By the way, I made a complaint. Why didn't we include data to us? There's no reason we can't handle data with this layer, and we can't handle UI with this layer. Just a side remark, but enough there. So with this in mind, the way our vision and the way we enable our customers to deal with this and enable them to do more innovation in an agile way, and over time help them reduce the maintenance, is through the following. And I want to start by saying our platform is predicated on all your assets. So we're not about removing, telling you to rip and replace. So the first thing I want to highlight.
So that's the segue. Is, let me show you how. Let me give you our vision on how we can reduce the maintenance and increase the innovation. Right. That's the segue.
This one, between this one.